Dialectical behavior therapy was created in the 1980s by Marsha Linehan in Seattle, Washington.
Today, DBT is taught all over the world.
We're two therapists who believe everyone can benefit from DBT skills.
I'm Kate.
I'm Michelle.
And this is DBT and Me.
Hello, everybody. It's another week of DBT and Me.
Woohoo!
There's Michelle. So today is week 3 of mindfulness. Had enough yet? Never enough mindfulness. That's the answer, in case you wondered. But really today I would say is an odds and ends. Stuff that doesn't doesn't fit neatly into, any of the particular hard and fast what or how skills. But just some of our final thoughts on ways to practice mindfulness and incorporate it more fully into your life. So I think Michelle is starting us off this week.
Yeah, I'm going to get it started. One of the things that we talked about when we very first said that mindfulness was the topic that we were going to discuss, and diving into what mindfulness is a little bit more, is we just want to give you guys as many ideas as we possibly can for how you can practice mindfulness and what it can look like. So some of this is probably going to sound like review today, but that's intentional. We want it to sound like a refresher and have some of this ring a bell from what we've talked about before.
Want to solidify.
Yeah, that's a nice way to put it. Yeah. We want it to be, sometimes we have to hear things a few times before it starts to sink in. So yeah, we just kind of wanted to run through some ways of practicing mindfulness. And one of the ways that I wanted to talk about that has been most helpful for me in my life is this idea of mindful movement. So this can look like all sorts of different things, but it is basically the opposite of sitting still with your eyes closed and trying to meditate or things like that. Not to give that a bad rap.
But that's the super stereotyped way of doing mindfulness.
Yes, that will not work for everybody. So again, right? Do that if it works for you, but if it doesn't, maybe try this out. And the reason why I think this has worked for me so much personally is because I started dancing when I was 4 years old. So I danced for years and years and years. And when I was about 17 years old, I was dancing 6 days a week, for hours every single day. So pretty much when I was not in school, I was dancing. It was just a way of life for me. My body was moving for hours a day. And then when I stopped dancing, it was one of those things that I lost for a number of years in my life, was having some kind of movement that I really enjoyed and really invigorated me. I stopped dancing because I had to have a hip surgery done. I had an injury while I was dancing. And so, after having that surgery done, I realized that my body couldn't dance the way that it used to anymore. And I stopped for quite a while. And I've come to see for myself that I have to have some kind of movement in my life, even if it's not on a daily basis. Some kind of movement in my life, because when I'm moving, especially for me when it's to music, which, that makes it dancing. It doesn't matter whether it looks good or bad, people. If music is playing and your body is moving, you are dancing. But so when I am dancing, when we think back to the things we've talked about thus far, with mindfulness, I'm observing my body's movements, especially if I'm dancing in a studio in front of a mirror. I'm watching myself and noticing how my body's moving, how it feels. I'm fully participating in that experience with the music, and I'm doing it in a one mindful way, and it feels effective to me. Those are some of the mindfulness skills that we've talked about the last couple weeks that I would really pull from. I'm not worrying about anything else. My brain doesn't have space for that, because I'm trying to do the choreography the way the teacher's demonstrating it or whatever it is. So for me, it looks like dance, but it can look a lot of different ways. I mean, mindful movement can be yoga. If yoga's your jam, it can be just going for a walk. Like just noticing how your body feels when it's moving. And now that I've gotten back into doing like movement and dancing a little bit more in my life, I've really realized like it's essential. Excuse me, for me, like I do a Zumba class once a week. I actually did it this morning before I came here, and I didn't get a chance to do it last week. And my week felt different last week. It was like something was missing because I didn't move my body like in a way that I really needed to, that's helpful for me and healing for me. It does so much good for me mentally and physically to move. So yeah, and another way for myself of practicing mindful movement, which I know you do too, Kate, is swimming.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Swimming, oh my gosh, swimming is a great way to practice
so many senses, right? With the
mindfulness.
feeling of the water and how it changes sound to be underwater, and it's just so engaging. The smells, right?
Yep.
Whether it be in nature or in a pool, water smells.
Yep. Another one for me personally, I really like horseback riding.
Yeah,
I
haven't in a
love
long
that.
damn time.
I feel so, yeah, I don't do it hardly ever, but whenever I do, oh, that's so calming for me too. So really, I mean,
Mountain biking was great for me. Before I injured my back, it was a great place for flow, right? Because you're like you're just focusing on the trail ahead of you, and you're just so in your body and so in the moment and connected with the bike, and
yeah, especially
skiing. I mean,
yeah,
I love skiing.
And I don't think it's a coincidence that a lot of these things we're talking about, as I realize that. I mean, for me, I tend to dance indoors in a studio, but like a lot of these things that you're describing, like outdoor activities,
like
because
being outside.
because you're in nature. Like I think nature makes us be a little more mindful. I think it slows us down ever so slightly. Yeah, it gives us an opportunity. We're not just staring at four walls. Like there's so much more to observe.
It's dynamic outdoors.
Yeah. And it just feels good to do things, I don't know, outdoors that are active. So, of course, do what you enjoy, do what you can within your body's abilities.
Don't
but
hurt yourself.
Moving, don't hurt yourself. But moving in any way can make us more mindful. Yeah. I feel like. So, yeah, that was one that I really wanted to kind of drive home and to touch
kneading
on.
Bread. Kneading bread.
Oh, I thought you meant need N-E-E-D?
No, K-N-E-A-D.
Yes, Kate likes to bake.
Kneading bread.
Yes.
But now it just sounds like I really need it. God damn
it. Oops. So yeah, that's one that's been really helpful
and
for
the
me.
Gestures don't help over the...
Yeah, Kate's gesturing the kneading of the bread, which looks kind of funny.
One of the things that I like to, I was going to say harp on, but that sounds negative. I like to really focus on.
Emphasize.
Hey, there's a good word for it. Is mindfulness is a part of daily life, daily activities. I'm sure we mentioned this a long time ago. Both Michelle and I are therapists in private practice. I emphasize mindfulness a lot in my private practice with my clients. And let me tell you the times I have heard, I don't have time to practice mindfulness. Lies. Were you awake at all over the course of a day? Because if you were awake, if you were conscious, you can practice mindfulness, right? So Michelle was talking about movement specifically as kind of one antithesis of the super stereotypical and also super effective for those who like it, sitting in one place with your eyes closed with your, hands turned up on your legs saying Om, is being mindful of anything you're doing. Anything. I can't say that enough, right? Are you cooking? Are you washing dishes? Are you grocery shopping? Are you doing whatever it is you do for work? Are you driving? Are you trying to get your kid down for a nap? Are you, right? I don't care. I don't care what, brushing your hair, brushing your teeth, putting on your makeup, taking off your makeup, right? Going to the bathroom. I don't care. Whatever you're doing, anything, literally any and all of it is something you can do to practice mindfulness, right? I think one of the, hearkening back to the skills over the last couple of weeks, I think the number one biggest switch between doing something mindfully and doing something not mindfully is really the one mindfully, right? Is being engaged in the activity you're engaged in and only in that activity. If you're washing the dishes, just wash the dishes. Like, notice the different textures of the different dishes that you're washing. Notice the smell of the soap that you're using. Notice the temperature of the water that's running over the dishes and over your hands, right? Like, the sounds of different things clinking together. You know, the ones that are like a nice satisfying clong of the pans, and then the, oh God, did I break that, of glass thing, you know, right? Like, there's so much, right? There's so much going on that normally we're super tuned out to in our day-to-day living. And so I guess I want to both give you an invitation and remove a certain excuse, right? There is no such thing as a day in which you were conscious at all and did not have the opportunity to practice mindfulness, because you don't have to set aside time, right? It doesn't have to be a specially allocated, set aside thing. Just turn it on.
Yep. And as you're talking about this, one of the things that came to mind for me is that one of the ways that you can try practicing mindfulness in your daily life and see if it makes a difference for you is with like the chores that you really can't stand. Because I was just thinking about this for myself.
True.
The chore that I dislike the most is dusting.
It is pretty awful.
I hate dusting. Like, it's the thing I like to do the least. Yeah, I hate it. But I was just thinking about it. I was like, but if I actually tried to practice mindfulness while I'm dusting, would that change the experience for me of it? And it doesn't mean I think I'd switch to being like, this is the greatest, but I think it would feel at least a little more bearable, maybe a little more interesting. Maybe it would, just not feel as much like a chore, but just more of like, I don't know.
Discovery.
An experience.
Yeah.
Like, this is just a thing that I'm doing right now. And really noticing with my five senses what it feels like to do that.
Yeah, the different textures of the things that you're wiping off, the change in color as you take the dust off of the thing. Right?
Actually observing, which I'm not doing when I do it. Like, I'm just doing it so, what was the word you said?
By rote.
Yeah. Like, I'm just doing the thing to try to hurry up and get it done, and I'm not.
And I bet you're being judgmental.
Oh my gosh, the whole time.
I bet your internal dialogue is super full of judgment.
Oh, yeah, it is. And just even thinking about trying to do that in a more mindful way changes it.
That makes a lot of sense.
So that could be one way to try it out in your daily life, the chore you dislike the most.
Also, one thing to like help kick yourself into paying attention to things, something I like advocate for, is the stuff that is super by rote, especially things you do literally the same way every time. I don't know if you know this, but you brush your teeth in the same order. You do. Every time. You also wash your body in the same order every time you shower or bathe. So one way to kind of fight the mindlessness is to do those things out of order. Like, consciously and intentionally, like, wherever your hand goes with that bar of soap, first go, no, I'm gonna go over here instead. And just, do it out of order. It's harder to be mindless about it if you force yourself to not do it in the super, I don't know, mechanized, automated
just the routine way you always do it. Yeah. Yep. So, I mean, I like that the biggest thing that you're pointing out is that the excuse of not having time doesn't work when it comes to mindfulness. I know for myself, like, there are some things that are, I don't know, more formal, I guess you could say, mindfulness practices that I've dabbled in or engaged with, and normally I'll do when it is kind of like a closing your eyes, being still. I do find that actually quite helpful for myself. And also, I'll sometimes be really good about doing it for a few days, and then it goes away, and then a couple weeks later, I'm like, I felt so good when I was doing that. I really want to bring that back. That happens for me on a regular basis when it's more structured mindfulness. And basically, I mean, what you're describing is unstructured mindfulness is what I would call it. Yes. Like, you can do it whenever with whatever. So How convenient is that? I don't think
Right?
it gets more convenient than that.
No, there's not very many other things you can do literally at all times.
Yep. And the final thing that we wanted to talk about today, as we were preparing for this episode and thinking about, like, what are maybe the different ways of practicing mindfulness that we really want to emphasize and point out and encourage you to try and see if it works for you. And one of the things that we talked about that we both kind of really liked is this idea, which I would say maybe it's a little bit of the how of mindfulness more than the what. Like, mindful movement is a what. Like, doing mindfulness while you're showering or
is a what.
Whatever it is, that's a what. This is kind of a how. So this is more, in the therapy world, we call it like process versus content. I don't know if that will make sense at all, but this is the how you're doing your mindfulness. This is one way to approach it. And just a different way to reframe it and think about it. It's just this idea of having a child's mind when you are approaching something that you're doing. Neither Kate or I have children, but Kate has nephews that she loves. I grew up with my mom running a daycare out of our house, so I had children running around in my home for 8 hours a day. So we both have spent, in our own ways, a fair amount of time around kids. And if you see how kids are with something, like, everything is fascinating. Mm-hmm. They notice all these little details that adults would never notice because adults, again, are just very much like, I have so many things to do today.
And the numbness of familiarity.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. As an adult, maybe you've done that experience 100 times, but a child is maybe doing it for the first time or the second time. This is like fresh and interesting to them. And they approach the world so differently than adults do. And honestly, kids are far more mindful than we probably give them credit for in terms of just what they know, what they notice.
One mindfully too.
That's true. They get centered on something and they want it. No, kidding. But they really do a much better job of observing than we do as adults. And that's like the base of mindfulness. If you don't start with observing, you're not going to get very far.
And I think even like down to like infants, and watching like an infant with any object in their hands is fantastic because you can tell that it's so foreign to them that there's just this fascination and this curiosity and this exploration. Up to including with infants putting it in their mouth, right? Like how many different senses can I use to experience this thing? And I think that's just a really different approach, right, to things than this sort of like, well, I know what a pen is. I don't have to look that closely at that pen.
Yep. So how you can take this idea and apply it, I think there's a couple different ways. One way that I might recommend this is that if you are about to have a new experience, I think as adults, well, I'll speak for myself anyways, like new experiences can sometimes provoke a sense of anxiety of like, how is this going to be? I don't know where I'm going. I hope my GPS is right in getting me there. I hope I'm on time. Like you have all these adult worries when you're about to have a new experience that kids just don't have. And so when you are going to do something new, when you're going to a new place, when, I don't know, I mentioned Zumba earlier, but let's say you're being invited to a Zumba class for the first time in your life and you've never done it and you don't know what it's going to be like, rather than going into new places or meeting new people or new activities with this sense of worry or dread that I think we can so commonly have, go in with a child's mind. Go into it with this sense of
wonder.
Sense of wonder, sense of curiosity, sense of just being like, I'm just going to really try to let as much in about this experience as I can and fully be in it, like fully participate in the experience, which is one of the core mindfulness skills we talked about. Just really be in it and take in as much as you can. And that may change your experience of it. I think the other way to practice child's mind too is, with those experiences or sometimes with those places or with those people that were like, ugh, I can't stand doing this, or I hate going there, or like whatever it is, the next time you have to do it, try it with fresh eyes. and see if it feels any different. If you truly try to act or pretend like it was your first time there, or set a goal for yourself of like, I'm going to notice something different here that maybe I haven't picked up on before. Like, yes, I've been in this room hundreds of times. This time I want to try to pick up on a detail that I've missed, because we miss things all the time. We can't, our brains don't have the capacity to focus on every single detail all the time. But notice what that does to the experience when it's an unpleasant one, or one that you're not looking forward to, or one that's become very familiar in maybe a way that you wish it wasn't. See what that's like when you go into it thinking like a child would, and just see what that does.
Yeah, see how it shifts things.
Yeah, definitely.
So gosh, trying to think what, if anything, are my sort of summary thoughts on mindfulness. I feel like I'm going to beat the dead horse just by saying, do it. Just do it. Do it a little bit. Do it when you think about it, right? And remember that you don't have to set time aside. It's got so much amazing neuroscience behind it. It allows us to have less judgment for ourselves and for our own experiences, and also for those around us. It allows us to make new neural connections in our prefrontal cortex, not to sound like a total nerd, but I kind of am, which allows us to be less overwhelmed by life and make better, more wise mind decisions. I mean, there's so many... I feel like a bit of a proselytizer, but there's very few things in life, right, emotionally especially, that mindfulness can't help. It's not like it's necessarily going to solve everything, but it tends to make everything a little bit better. And so for me, I'm just a huge proponent of trying it out. I know it might be something new. It might be something scary. It might be something hard. I think I said this early on. Do it badly, right? Like, do it badly. Do it for short spans of time, but do it, right? And notice what it does. Those are sort of my summary thoughts, I think.
I like your summary thoughts. I don't know if I have too much more to add on to that, because I agree with everything you just said. I think one of the things that I noticed myself kind of touching on today in wrapping up mindfulness, or talking a little bit more about how I find mindfulness helpful for myself personally, is just when we practice mindfulness, how much it can change our internal emotional experience.
Yep.
It changes the game when we're doing things in a mindful way versus when we're doing things in a mindless way. It changes how we feel emotionally about the thing that we're doing. And I just think that's something that is amazing. I think it's amazing that we can shift our attention ever so slightly, and it can make us feel very different emotionally. And that we live in this world that is
so rushed. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think mindfulness is slowing down just a little.
Just a little. Yeah. It doesn't mean like, like you were talking about, of like, I have to sit and meditate for 30 minutes a day. You don't have to hold yourself to that high standard, because there's so much beauty in the world around us that as we're rushing, we just fail to notice. We don't look at it. We tell ourselves we don't have time, and it's just, quite frankly, not true.
Yeah.
Smell
the goddamn roses.
Right? You're just spending your time focusing on other things that are taking away from like a mindful experience more than likely. But when we actually center our attention, really observe and see what's around us, then you're practicing mindfulness. And there's so much to observe, and it can be very soothing and very calming, and just really change the way that we perceive ourselves and the world that we're in. Yeah, because there is a bunch of crap out there. But there's also a lot of beauty. Yes. And mindfulness helps us find that beauty, I feel like. So, yeah.
I like it.
Cool. So because this was our last week to talk about mindfulness, our homework for you guys this week, take whatever has felt most helpful for you out of the last few episodes, and we are just encouraging you guys for your homework to practice 1 minute of mindfulness a day. At least, I mean, more if you want to. That's a starting point.
It's been a minute. I have to stop now.
Right, yeah. If it feels good, keep going. But to start figuring out what this looks like for you to incorporate it into your daily life. It's going to look different and unique for each person, just depending on what works in your lifestyle and what you enjoy, what feels good to you. Some ways of practicing mindfulness probably aren't going to fit, and some hopefully are, and just play around with it. But practice mindfulness at least 1 minute a day in whatever way you want to try it out.
And remember, you don't have to set aside time.
Yep, exactly. You have the time to do it because, as you put it, Kate, when you're awake, you can be mindful if you choose to be. So, yeah, find at least a minute a day to practice mindfulness in some way, shape, or form over the next week. Email us, dbtandmepodcast@gmail.com.
Yeah, nice. Yeah. Today, we are actually going to do the closing moment a little bit differently. I'm going to harken back to Michelle's commentary about a child's mind, and that's kind of where we're going to go. So, today, you're not going to close your eyes. Instead, you're going to keep them wide open and do one of a couple things. One, you can just look. Find something in the room around you or the environment.
If you're not in a room. I
know, right? I was like, oh, well, the car, that's hard. Yeah. Look at the traffic, right. Please pay attention.
Wherever you
are, find something. Or if you want to, you can also pick something up and hold it in your hands. In fact, I would say I encourage this if you're in a situation where it's possible. So yeah, pick up a random object. It doesn't have to be anything particularly new or exciting. It can be completely mundane. And just pick it up, hold it in your hands, and what you're gonna do is explore it. You're going to touch it with your hands. You're going to look at it with your eyes. Depending on what it is, if there seems to be any reason worth doing so, you might try smelling it. You might try brushing it against your skin in different places. How does it feel to the back of my hand? How does it feel to the side of my cheek? How does it feel to if I touch it lightly versus if I touch it with a heavier hand, if that's possible? You might imagine, like I said before, that you're a child and this is your first time holding this object or anything like it. If it suits your brain better, you could almost think also you're an alien coming to this planet, and this is your first time encountering this. But the long and short of the idea of this activity is to be fully present to the object that you are observing, whether that be from a distance, just by looking at it, or if that be with as many different senses and parts of yourself as you can. What is this thing? What colors does it have on it? What textures? How heavy is it if you're holding it? How much does it weigh? Is it weighted more on one end than the other? Do any parts on it move? Right? Just as many questions as you can ask yourself about this thing. What is it? Without answering, what is it, right? We want to avoid things like, this is a Bic pen. Right? We want to be like, this is a black cylindrical object that tapers at one end, right? And has a clicky thing on the back. How exciting is that? But just really lose yourself in whatever this thing is. I would say that this particular exercise doesn't have to have a clear endpoint. So today, and possibly only today, I'm going to say spend whatever time you want with this closing moment activity. I don't know what you're holding on to or how long you might be able to explore it. So for now, I'm just going to say open your child mind or alien mind or whatever sounds good to you and have fun exploring. And we'll see you next week.
Thanks, everyone. To learn more about us and the DBT skills we're teaching each week, join our Facebook group. Simply log in to your Facebook profile and search for DBT and Me Podcast.